Let's quickly take you over to this other live stakeout cam, and I believe that's Jamie Raskin speaking about what we heard in the Oversight Committee today. Let's listen in live.
This a seemingly otherwise desolate facility where they've set up some offices and some computers for us to go and review the Epstein files. I think there were 4 computers in the room that I was in. I was at one of the computers. Now, we're there because the members of the Judiciary Committee are very concerned because the most emphatic provision in the Epstein Files Transparency Act was that none of the survivors' privacy be compromised in any way. And we wanted to make sure that their names would be redacted and all personal identifying information would be redacted. But there are hundreds and hundreds of pages in the Epstein files that were recently released where identifying information about victims is right there, including people's names. So that was a dramatic departure from the demands of the statute. But then conversely, we didn't want to see any redactions of the names of co-conspirators, accomplices, enablers, abusers, rapists, simply to spare them potential embarrassment, political sensitivity, or disgrace of some kind. And yet, nonetheless, the Epstein file documents that were released are filled with redactions of names and information about people who clearly are not victims and may fall into that other category. So I went over there and I was able to determine, at least I believe, that there were tons of completely unnecessary redactions in addition to the failure to redact the names of victims, and so that's troubling to us.
Did you see names of any potential co-conspirators that were redacted?
Well, you know, I saw the names of lots of people who were redacted for mysterious or baffling or inscrutable reasons.
Are any of them well-known individuals?
For example, you know, Mr. Wexner, his name was redacted from a government document, and I couldn't understand the logic of that. He was not a victim, and his name has appeared other places. Now, the Department of Justice has not sent forth its so-called privilege log, so it's not explained yet why there might be certain redactions that have been made. I saw one document which was an email that was sent by Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, which was the forward of an email that he had received from some of his lawyers giving an account of a conversation between Epstein lawyers and Trump lawyers and others about what had taken place during that 2009 period. It was during the period of the 2009 investigation. And Epstein's lawyers synopsized and quoted Trump as saying that that Jeffrey Epstein was not a member of his club at Mar-a-Lago, but he was a guest at Mar-a-Lago, and he had never been asked to leave. And that was redacted for some indeterminate, inscrutable reason. I know it seems to be at odds with some things that President Trump has been saying recently about how he had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club or asked him to leave, and this was that appears to contradict it.
What did you see specific to President Trump or President Clinton, and were there specific redactions to them?
Well, I just gave an example of one redaction related to President Trump. I did not see any redactions related to President Clinton.
What was the smoking gun in all this?
Well, I don't, you know, here's the thing. The Department of Justice is under orders from Congress to release the entire Epstein file. They released 3.5 million documents, and they've withheld 3 million documents. So about half of all the documents have not been released yet. Of the 3.5 million documents that have been released, I probably had the opportunity to review maybe 30 or 40 of them. Okay, so this is going to be an extremely time-consuming and painstaking process. The Attorney General and the Department of Justice have said that this process was something that was completed by them back in July. These materials could have been released long ago, but they're just being released now. And if every member of Congress who voted for the discharge petition, if all 217 of us spent every waking hour over at the Department of Justice, it would still take us months to get through all of those documents. And there are only 4 computers now, so they would certainly need to get a couple hundred more computers for all of the members. But the point is that there is no way before Attorney General Bondi arrives on Wednesday that we're going to have the opportunity to go through every redaction in order to ask thorough questions.
You think that's the connection, that they held up releasing this so that everybody wouldn't be as thoroughly prepared for her testimony Wednesday?
Well, no, I think that the Department of Justice has been in a cover-up mode for many months and has been trying to sweep the entire thing under the rug. And the more deeply that I get into it, because obviously our colleagues on the Oversight Committee have taken the lead, but judiciary plays a very important role because we oversee the Department of Justice. But the more that I've gotten into it, the more I believe that the survivors here, the victims who are now active citizens for justice, really are leading the way. And we need to be having hearings with the survivors to hear from them about their experiences so they can explain what happened and so they can begin to set forth a theory of what took place. We need to be investigating the money. We need to be investigating the organizational hierarchy. There's no way you run a $1 billion international child sex trafficking ring with just 2 people committing crimes, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. No way. It doesn't work like that. So we need to figure out what other conspiracies were involved, what other co-conspirators were involved. And I really do believe that listening to the survivors is going to be our pathway through this nightmare.
What is the next step for Democrats to take? You say there are obviously millions of documents, 4 computers. What is the next step? And in addition, what is the next step to get that other tranche of 3 million plus documents released?
Well, a lot is riding on Attorney General Bondi's appearance before us on the Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. We believe that this administration must listen to the survivors. We believe that this administration must release the entire Epstein file, which is compelled both by a congressional subpoena and by a federal law at this point. We want all of the information to come out, and the only redactions should be the names of the victims and the identifying information. Unfortunately, they violated that precept by releasing the names of a lot of victims, which is either spectacular incompetence and sloppiness on their part, or, as a lot of the survivors believe, a deliberate threat to other survivors who are thinking about coming forward, that they need to be careful because they can be exposed and have their personal information dragged through the mud as well.
On the document mentioning the president, just to drill down to make sure I'm understanding right, are you saying you saw redactions that you can't explain for any other reason other than that they would be embarrassing to the president?
No, but I don't know why that was redacted. It was puzzling to me that conversation was redacted. And
just about Mar-a-Lago and the timeline of when he was a member.
Yeah, it was about Mar-a-Lago and a conversation in which Donald Trump then allegedly said in conversation with Epstein lawyers and others that Epstein was not a member of Mar-a-Lago, but he was a guest at Mar-a-Lago and he was never asked to leave. And I couldn't figure out why that would be redacted. There is certainly nothing in our federal law that would require redaction in that case. It's part of the file and it should be released. It just raises questions. But there are many more examples like that where that came from. There are tons of mysterious redactions and we don't know why.
How did you approach today's review? Did you go in knowing you were looking for certain documents that you could find and figure out what these redactions were about? Or did you kind of go in there and try to see what you could find in these vast, broad releases, 3 million documents?
I was interested in certain redactions that seemed puzzling to me, and I wanted to go and see were there actually names of victims in there that caused the redactions, and in the overwhelming number of cases, there were not names of victims there that would explain the redactions. So that there are puzzling, inexplicable redactions, and so we need some explanation from the Department of Justice about what their process was and why it seems to have created so many erroneous non-redactions, causing tremendous pain to survivors, and then so many seemingly false redactions that made it as well.
What do you have to do to get some more information out of this, or get fewer redactions? Do you have to file another bill, pass another bill saying, this has to come back to us unredacted? There has to be another date certain? What's your...
Well, we're going to start by posing questions directly to Attorney General Bondi about the process that produced such flawed results and that has created such mystery. But also, we want to get a commitment from the Department of Justice to clean it up as quickly as possible and to get them to release the millions of other documents that are still out there.
Was Mr. Wexner the only other co-conspirator you could name?
There are lots of other names out there, but that's one that just leaps to mind. I just got back from there. But
any others you could name at this time?
I wouldn't want to name any others at this point, but there are certainly lots of names of other people who were enablers and cooperators with Jeffrey Epstein that were just blanked out for no apparent reason.
And you say you go into this room at this building, and there's 4 computers there. Is that, do you think, a way to limit how members can go through and process this when you say there's so much information there and it would take months and months to go through everything, that there's only 4 terminals?
Well, remember, what Congress called for was a complete release of the files and just the redaction of the names of the victims. Now, unfortunately, the names of the victims were not redacted, relating to more than 100 women in the case. So that is baffling and staggering that would happen. But then there are thousands and thousands of pages replete with redactions. There are entire pages and memos where you can't see anything. It's all blacked out, and there are no names of victims in there. So it's just a very puzzling thing, and the Department of Justice needs to explain it. The whole country should be able to read what this federal law compelled them to produce.
Are there international names? Obviously, we know of who is now formerly Prince Andrew, but are there other international names that you noticed that maybe had been redacted?
Well, one of them is the co-conspirator, Jean-Luc, is it Brunel? I can't remember. The Frenchman, he's certainly in there. But yeah, there are other international names there as well.
Did you see anything about Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary? A lot of your colleagues are calling on him to resign based on his associations with what's come out recently. Anything redacted that you uncovered today with him?
Let's see. Not that I'm recalling, but I know I've certainly seen his name throughout the files. I can't remember if it was redacted or not.
And when you go into this room, do you take written notes? What are you allowed to do?
Yeah, written notes. You cannot have any computer or phone with you, and what is really unfair is you can't have any staff with you. So we're pretty dependent on our staff who've been reading a lot more of the Epstein files than we have. So we have people who've been focused on it, so who are more expert on it than we are. But it takes a while to figure out how that particular computer system runs, but I assume that my colleagues will be able to figure it out. It probably takes a half an hour or 45 minutes to...
Any last questions?
Last question on Secretary Lutnick. Do you share the view of some of your colleagues that he should resign, the Secretary?
Look, people are losing their jobs in England right now. It is a huge political scandal there. And I'm just afraid that the general coarsening and degradation of American life has somehow conditioned people not to take this as seriously as we should be taking it. I mean, it's an incredibly serious thing. When you read through these files and you read about 15-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls, I saw a mention of a 9-year-old girl today. I mean, this is just preposterous and scandalous. So, you know, I don't want to get into any particular case right now, but I hope the whole country is focusing on the absolute gravity of the crisis that we're in.
And you think the British are taking it more seriously than we are?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a huge scandal in England right now, going all the way to the Prime Minister, and his name is not mentioned anywhere in the Epstein files, unlike Donald Trump's. But you know, they had sent someone over here to America who got involved with Epstein, and it is absolutely rocking British politics. And this is something that the whole country, regardless of your political party or beliefs, has got to pay attention to. And, you know, there are lots of similar institutionalized sex abuse scandals in our country, whether at the college level, the high school level, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, various churches. And I think that's the reason why the people of the country are taking it so seriously. And I just hope that the politicians recognize what a dramatic crisis this is for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
9 and 10 years old, were the names sort of standout names, those who had interactions with 9 and 10-year-olds?
No.
Thank you.
All right, you're just listening in there to Jamie Raskin, the Democrat from Maryland, talking about this as it's the first day that members of Congress have an uncensored view, unredacted view of some of these Epstein files. And you heard there from Jamie Raskin saying he looked at a minuscule amount, 30 to 40 of these 3.5 or so million documents that had already been released. There are potentially 3 million or so more still to be left out. And he talked about some of the redactions, potentially some co-conspirators involved. He called it, quote, mysterious and baffling, the reasons why those were not shown originally. He also mentioned that he would like to get some clarity from the Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's expected to be before the House Judiciary Committee midweek. So we'll see what's coming there. And he initiated and talked about some of the 3 pillars of what he hopes in terms of learning from and listening to the victims, also releasing the full documents and the redactions he believes only should be the victims involved in this case. So plenty of developments. He also mentioned what's going on with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, in hot water over these Epstein files. We've already seen the fallout, the reaction there across the pond in terms of this. We'll see if it has a similar impact or effect back here in the United States. All right, we're going to continue to follow this. Plenty to get into. Also conversations about now President Donald Trump, his involvement. There was a document he read, Jamie Raskin did, about potentially Jeffrey Epstein's membership or association with Mar-a-Lago. He also said he did not see any documents relating to the Clintons. That has also been a point of contention between the Oversight Committee, having them potentially be before them relating to these Epstein files. All right, I'm Andy Mack here on Live Now from Fox. We're back after this.